And I am Laura Lawson, and you are listening to The Wine Crush, the show that's all about the grape in all its glory. We are on our quest for the perfect visit to Napa Valley, and we are giving you our opinions and how we think you can best see the valley today. But right now, we are going to have a wonderful guest who can give you an outside opinion on it. We have Scott Jones. He is the Food and Wine Executive Editor of Southern Living Magazine. Scott, welcome to The Wine Crush.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Oh, I'm delighted to have you. I've been a fan of Southern Living since my mother was a fan, since my grandmother was a fan. You're a staple in my house, to say the least.
Super.
So it's always fun when I pick up Southern Living and I get to see something about my two favorite passions. One's the gardening with Steve Bender, but the other is, of course, you talking about wine.
Right.
And recently I know y'all did an edition on talking about visiting the wine country.
Well, we've done a good bit of stuff about wine country. Particularly some of our great regions here in the South, and we've also touched at various times on Napa and Sonoma.
Well, of course, anytime anyone can get off their couch, get out their door, and hit a winery within an hour and a half, which in all honesty, most people in the country can do, it's a great way to spend an afternoon.
Right.
What advice do you have people who are seeking to visit, whether it's Napa, Sonoma, or their local wine country? What's the best way they can enjoy the day?
Well, to learn how to enjoy wine by sipping rather than maybe imbibing a little too much too early. It's about the long haul, and you really want to be able to. Obviously, you want to have fun and not make it, too much of an academic experience. But if you really do want to learn more about wine, I think taking the opportunity to meet with some of the folks in the tasting room, learn how to taste, learn about the nuances of the various grapes, and that, to me, that's one of the coolest things, is just learning how different, they talk about terroir and how different grapes, taste from different regions. Again, whether it's in our own backyard here in the South, or whether it's in other parts of wine country around America.
I don't think it matters what country you're in or where you are within our great country. Great words of wisdom. Remember, right. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of people fall victim to the sprint mentality. Oh, I have to go here, I have to go there, I have to go there, and then by about 12:30, they really aren't interested in doing anything.
That's exactly right.
Unfortunately, I think I've seen several of my friends fall victim to that. Well, tell me a little bit about Food and Wine. What do you do as far as the wine portion? Do you travel around? Do you go to these tasting rooms? Do you go to different regions? Give us your experience.
I do. Actually, one of the, I feel really blessed to be able to actually draw a paycheck writing about food and wine, but primarily because our readership, while we have 16 million readers every month, our magazine focuses on the region of the South, and so most of my time is really spent exploring the wine regions in what I would consider my own backyard, from Virginia to North Carolina to Texas, and occasionally I am fortunate enough to get out to the West Coast and hit California and Washington, for example. But most of our, all of our primary our focus is on the wine growing regions of the South and how that really plays with the cuisine of the South. And I think that we've got a really growing wine industry here. And obviously a long-standing tradition in terms of our cuisine, and I think they're really finally coming together in many ways.
I would have to agree with you on that. And once again, I go back. It doesn't matter whether you're in country or without, whether I'm going to Chateau Alon in Georgia, whether I'm going to Childress up in North Carolina,
right.
Whether I'm going to West Bend up in Virginia.
Exactly.
There are certain things that always apply when you're
right.
visiting these tasting rooms.
Right.
Do you have any golden rules besides don't sprint when you're visiting these tasting rooms?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that I really try and take advantage of is being smart about actually buying some wines and bringing them back home to get out the good word. That's one of the things that I'm really encouraging folks in the magazine. Again, whether it is a wine shipping friendly state like California, or whether you're going to a place here in the South where you really have to grab some bottles and chuck them in your car and drive them back. I really encourage folks to not miss the opportunity to think about, how they'll, go there, taste those wines, find ones they love, bring them back, and continue the process actually, once they've left the winery, whether it's back in their hotel with friends or, back at their supper table. That's another thing that I really try and encourage folks to do, is not miss the opportunity to, because, you really, throughout that course of the day, you're going to be limited. There's just only so many wines you can taste in a day. But I really try and take advantage of those wines that I really want to, maybe lay down and age a little bit, or again, taking the opportunity to buy wines that are say tasting room specific that you can't get, say, through a mailing list or in some kind of another consumer setting, whether at a wine store, whatever, that are really exclusive to those tasting rooms. And that's something that I think a lot of people miss. They think they go there, they try a wine, they love it, but they don't realize that it may be exclusive to the tasting room, and they miss an opportunity to enjoy that at a later date.
I think that's one of the greatest joys of going to a tasting room wherever you're going, is that it doesn't matter whether your winemaker says that he is devoted to Chardonnay and Pinot. Right. I guarantee somewhere in that cellar is one little barrel. Well, I found this great Gewürztraminer, or I found this great Riesling, or I really like this Charbonneau that came in, and I want to play around with it. And I think anytime you go in a tasting room, those are the gems you ought to look for.
That's right.
Whether Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, does not matter. Those are always the fun stuff and the ones you can impress your friends with.
You bet. And another thing that I would really encourage folks to do, and again, one of my top list of things to do in tasting rooms is, just kind of go in there with an open mind, and don't be afraid to say that you don't know everything about wine, and be open-minded, because the folks in the tasting rooms who really respond to that, and that's when you really learn a lot of great stuff that you might otherwise miss, or you may open up a dialogue with the winemaker who might be pouring that day, and end up he may, like you said, may have that great bottle of something or another he's been playing around with that he might be willing to share, he or she might be willing to share, that could open up a whole new experience. So I really encourage folks to not leave the wine snobbery at the door, and just go in open-minded and willing to learn and have fun.
You're stealing some of my best ideas, because that is definitely one key I will give to anybody wherever you are. If you walk in there pretending like you know everything, nobody's going to want to tell you a thing. Yeah. And you're going to miss out so much of that great opportunity that you had to learn. Right.
And, and I think even for folks who are not regular, folks who've not spent a lot of time in tasting rooms, if you've been in one, there's usually kind of one in every crowd, and you realize that that they're missing a whole. I mean, they're really missing the entire experience.
I promise you this: the person who goes into a tasting room experience saying they know it all is probably the least educated of the bunch.
Well said. That's exactly right.
And that's the only way to look at it.
That's exactly right.
Well, it's always fun looking at it from your perspective. When you go in, anytime I talk to a food and wine editor, this is what I like to ask them: is it all about the food, or is it all about the wine?
Well, for me, because I trade in both, and I think, again, just speaking regionally, it's so important for us to. I've got a bit of a chip on my shoulder about this, because I think the cuisine of the South gets a lot more pub than some of the great wines that we're producing here, and I think it's time that we probably spend a little more time thinking about how that wine works for the food. So when I'm usually in a tasting room, I am thinking about how I can take that information back to the readers and give them practical applications for those wines. So if it's a great Sangiovese that I've had in Virginia, well, you know what, I'm going to come back and try and pair that with recipes that may fit, so that will fit with that wine, so they can, because for a lot of our, for many of our readers, some of these varietals may be new to them, and they're looking for some, a little more help with how you might serve these. But then, there are times when I'm just doing it on my day off. Say my wife and I have an opportunity to go together. Well, then I'll throw off the food editor hat and just, sit and enjoy wine, just like the next person, just hungry to learn, hungry to get that experience. So it depends on which hat I have on. But generally, when I'm in there, on the clock as a food editor and wine editor, I'm looking at how not only can I discover, the next great wine that's coming out of a particular state, but how I then bring that back and give it some practical takeaways and ways to use for our readers.
Scott, without a doubt, you have hit on three of the greatest points of traveling to wine country wherever you go, and I appreciate you being